Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. Recently, the Australian media played a propaganda piece, and in this video we'll be reviewing that video that they published, God willing, and expose the hypocrisy, the double standards, and the biased agendas put forward against the Muslims who are living in Australia. Let's go through the video.
The bold plan to build a Muslim state within Australia. The warnings have come from nervous insiders. They're Islamic leaders who are pleading with the government to stop it from happening. And as David Richardson reports, they're receiving death threats just for speaking out.
Sadly, my religion in the current situation is an absolute mess. I come from a lineage of Islamic leadership. When I am worried about what's happening and what I see from my community and religion, trust me that there's something going on.
A stunning admission from the Imam of Peace. The president of the Islamic Association of South Australia, Imam Tawhidi, is worried, and he's not alone.
Society is still worried. And when it reaches a stage where a Muslim Imam is worried, that's when something needs to be done.
Tonight, the Muslim clerics and community leaders and their radical calls for Islam to reform itself, and a stark warning of a plan to alter Australia forever, to establish a caliphate here, right under our noses.
The agenda is to create a country within your country. That's what it is. It's to create another country or another government within the Australian government. That's what I believe is their agenda, these extreme Muslims.
Should Sharia law be introduced into Australia?
تطبيق الشريعة مستحيل. The short answer is no, but there's another problem, is that there are many sects within Islam, and each sect considers a different version of the Sharia. So which one would you end up following?
There are about 500,000 Muslims currently living in Australia, 2.2% of the population. But according to some, there are plans to massively change those figures.
There's a movement in Australia to increase the population of the Muslims.
Imam Tawhidi believes it's happening now, a plan to build a nation inside our nation.
So a Muslim community wants to buy an estate, name the streets Islamic names. Literally, they're naming the streets Islamic names of figures that in history massacred and killed people. And there won't be any drinking, there won't be anything un-Islamic. It's a small Islamic country within Sydney.
The Imam believes...
Okay, so as you can see, the propaganda that is preached here is selectively picking an imam to speak on behalf of the Muslims. If you notice, when Australian media selects an individual to speak on behalf of Islam, it's usually an imam that goes by the narrative of secular think tanks. They won't interview a mainstream imam to defend that position. This person is most likely a Shia or Rafida. This person is accusing Muslims for having street names in Australia. That's part of diversity. That's not Islamization. How is that Islamization to have a street name that is named after a particular person? He then accuses Muslims not drinking amongst each other. What kind of an imam is this? What kind of an imam is this? This is what you called a government-funded imam. A complete sellout. These types of imams are fed by the government. They are funded by the government. They are resourced by the government to give you a washed down version of Islam. There's an underlying war going on between the Muslims and the secularists. You see, the secularists have overcome Christianity by removing it from the Constitution. They told Christians, if you want to practice your religion, if you want to practice your biblical laws, do it in the closet of your own house. This is something what the Christians used to say to the homosexuals. They used to tell the homosexuals, listen, do not come outside. Do not profane your homosexuality in front of the public masses. If you want to practice homosexuality, do it in your own closet of your homes. But you see how now the tides have turned. The secularists are telling the Christians, now you practice your religion in your own home and do not let it interfere into our constitution. Notice how the tides have turned. But now there's an uprise. The Muslims are here in Australia and they want to practice their faith. And if they are practicing their faith, whether it's wearing the burqa or wearing the veil, no, you can't do that, because if you do, you're Islamizationing Australia. In fact, no Muslim is forcing the hijab or the niqab upon anyone. They are doing it amongst themselves. How is that Islamization upon the non-Muslims? It's called diversity, to practice your religion just like the Jews practice their religion. The Jews do not eat non-halal foods. They have a kosher. Do we then accuse the Jews for imposing their Jewish beliefs on everybody else? No, no one makes that assertion. So why is that assertion made upon Muslims? I have never seen a Muslim who forced another non-Muslim in Australia to eat halal foods. Did anyone force that? Did any Muslim tell another non-Muslim that he can't drink alcohol? Did he take alcohol away from him? Did he force him to submit to the law of God? No. So why is this pandemic created? Let's continue.
Governments need to stop the construction of mosques and community centres and investigate what's really going on.
I believe that there needs to be a new government body that investigates everything regarding the Muslim religion in this country, starting off with the leaders of the community.
Okay, let's pause it there. Do you notice how this particular media actually follows the narrative of Pauline Hanson? I'm telling you, all the imams would actually condemn this particular so-called imam for speaking like this, in this fashion, that a national inquiry is needed into every mosque. It's clear that this individual has been put there so it can make Pauline Hanson's narrative look true. Hey, look, Pauline Hanson's right. There is even an imam. There is even an imam that is defending Pauline Hanson's cause here. And it's this fear campaign. Now, is this person telling us that the mosques, that the lecture rooms, that the Muslim schools are not being watched, are not being recorded? They don't have spies in them? That's the ASIO intelligence agency. They've been doing it for years. They already have that in all of the mosques and in all of the lectures. They're all being recorded. So they raise a fear campaign to basically close down mosques. And they use these secret agents like that speaker who is probably in bed with Pauline Hanson, and they secretly work together, without a doubt, only because to raise Islamophobia and a fear campaign against the Muslims. This is coordinated, calculated, and planned. How many terrorist acts has happened in Australia? How many? You couldn't count it on your fingers. Now, some may say that many arrests have been laid, and that's why we have minimal terrorist attacks in Australia. Well, exactly. So why are we raising the fear campaign when we already have the intelligence agencies to stop a threat? In fact, they're doing a pretty good job, if you ask me. I mean, we have been bombing the hell out of Syria and Iraq. Of course, there's going to be terrorist attacks here. Of course, the terrorist threat is going to raise to high because we are actually bombing those nations. It's only natural for them to react the way they do. I'm not saying it's right. Of course, it's wrong for them to wear suicide vests and blow our marketplaces. This is completely wrong and against Islam. And even as Australians, we fear that happening in this country. But our intelligence agencies and ASIO are doing a fantastic job in preventing against this thing. But so why are we raising the Islamophobic agenda here? Why are we then labeling all the other Muslims as suspects? Majority of the Muslims in this country are law-abiding citizens. We follow the law of the land. We follow our religion and do what is right. Let's continue.
Going even further than Pauline Hanson's calls for a royal commission into Islam in Australia.
They're all coming from the Wahhabi extremist ideology.
Sunni community leader Jamal.
Okay, let's pause it there. Did you notice how he actually labels a particular group Wahhabi and so forth? This is another agenda. It's called divide and conquer the Muslims. So they use particular hypocrites amongst the Muslims to label a certain particular group a Wahhabi, or they even label them from Saudi Arabia and Qatar and so forth. This is to demonize Australia from countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia. These people don't even have the proof and evidence that countries like Qatar or Saudi Arabia, their governments and their scholars are actually supporting and funding ISIS members to come here and set a Sharia law to set or to target Australians to kill them in the acts of terrorism. This is only to disunite the Muslims. They use these particular figures to create disunity amongst the Ummah. They've been doing it for centuries. They've been doing it for hundreds of thousands of years, and we see it. It's quite evident. Let's continue.
Dawood believes Wahhabi money is funding the expansion attempts in Australia.
The finance comes from a wide range of sources. Mainly, it comes from the Gulf states, mainly Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Kuwait.
Rubbish. What a load of crap.
Jamal Dawood wants the burqa and Niqab banned from this country.
We are urging authorities to take actions, and we want authorities to take actions, serious actions, not only banning Niqab and burqa.
He's no stranger to controversy.
So there you go. You have a Muslim apparent imam asking for the Niqab and the burqa to be banned. What kind of Muslims are these, really? These are the Muslims that they want. Ones who completely reject Islamic law and Islam. This is exactly what they want. If any Muslim sheikh or scholar or imam in this country ever suggests to support the hijab or the niqab or the burqa or to support Islamic teachings, they are completely outcasted. They are, according to them, extremist Muslims. They are fundamentalists. But it's interesting because even the non-Muslims, I will guarantee you, no matter how much these individuals in the video want to be politically correct, go according to today's Western political correctness, they themselves are even looked at as extremists. I can tell you right now. Why? People like Sister Jasmine is one of the most secular Muslims. Sister Yasmin Muqaddid, she's one of the most secular Muslims in this country. People like Walid Ali, he's one of the most secular Muslims. He's even openly said he supports homosexuality. Yet they are seen as closet Muslims, undercover Muslims, Muslims who want to impose Sharia into this country. So, it's interesting how they bring up these, secular Muslims, like these secular imams, these puppet-run imams by the government. But I can tell you that even these individuals are not accepted. In fact, I challenge both of these imams in the video to get a ticket to fly to America. Come on, go on. You want to accept and bow down to complete secularism and sell your religion? Go and catch a plane to America. See if Mr. Donald Trump accepts you. So notice, regardless if you're a radical Muslim, regardless if you're a moderate Muslim, regardless if you are a sellout Muslim, regardless if you're a secular Muslim, regardless if you're a liberal Muslim, you're still a Muslim. And you're all under suspicion. Notice, when an Islamophobe even watches this, you know what he will say? He will say that even the imams in this video are making taqiyya. They are lying to the non-Muslims because even they want Sharia in this country. I will guarantee you they say that. But the only ones that are accepted, you need to literally be a non-Muslim. If you are an imam, you need to be a complete non-Muslim. I don't know how that works, but it probably does. Maybe someone like Rita Pinahi, who's a writer at the Rupert Murdoch Herald Sun. She's a columnist and she writes, and she basically spews complete vomit against all aspects of Islam, right? So you need to be someone like that. That's the only way you're accepted. You need to be someone like, say, Ayan Ali Hirsi, an ex-Muslim. You need to be someone like, say... Now, how is that freedom of religion? How is that freedom of thought? How is that respecting someone's views? That's not respecting someone's views. If we are told to respect the views of atheists, because atheists, for example, say it's okay to do abortions, you can kill babies, we are told to respect those views. Okay, fine, we respect those views. Why then our views are not respected? To the least, if you don't respect them, let us allow to have those views, and do not tell us to step down from our positions and let us continue to do the work that we do. Why are we told to get fired? Why are we told to shut down? Why are we criticized to the level that we're just slandered in the media? I mean, sure, you can disagree, but why are you telling us that we must stand down from our positions? If our position is there to have difference of opinion, difference of view, why are you telling us that our jobs, we must get fired, we must resign from the work that we do? So notice how secularism, it forces their indoctrination on others. But then they have a problem when Muslims come here, certain Muslims come here, a minority, who want to impose Sharia law and make this a Sharia country. So notice the double standards. On one hand, you have Muslim extremists coming here who want to impose Sharia for the rest of the community, including the non-Muslims. But then on another hand, you have secularists who are not only going abroad to impose secularism in Afghanistan, in the Middle East and all those countries, but they're trying to impose secularism upon Muslims in this country. That we must accept homosexuality, that we must accept abortions, And we must accept the fact that we can't think of doing anything Islamic in this country, like wearing the niqab or wearing the burqa. I mean, do you see the double standards and hypocrisy? And then these are the same people that tell us that we have freedom of rights, freedom of religion in this country. So it completely is illogical for these people to claim that they are people of libertarianism when it's quite contrary. Let's continue.
Or attack, often threatened, even assaulted for his moderate views.
Okay, do you notice the propaganda here? Now they've picked a radical Muslim who goes out and spits on another non-Muslim. And, you can find radicals in all types of religion. I mean, if I was to walk down, in Western Australia, or a place where you have lots of Australians, and you had, let's say, the English Defence League there, the Australian Defence League there, and you had all these patriot fronts there, and you went to have a dialogue and a conversation with them, it's going to get really heated, and you're probably going to get a lot of abuse from these people if you went to an isolated area. So what the media does is it manipulates the Muslim masses. It basically ignores the moderate Muslims, the majority of the Muslims. But it goes out and singles out and tries to find a person that is radicalized. And then they say, this is what Islam is. This is the behavior of Muslims. I mean, can you imagine if we did that with Christian extremists? If I went out and picked a Christian extremist and interviewed him and said, look, this is what a Christian is. This is what their religion is. I mean, how denigrating, how irrespectful, how disrespectful, how much distortion would that be against the Christian faith? Let's continue.
Is no longer a lone voice in the wilderness.
There is no commandment for the burqa or the hijab to be worn.
Can you believe this? An imam saying there is no commandment of the burqa or the hijab. Not even the hijab is safe now. There's no... Look, I'm going to put a hyperlink below this video, and there is verses of hijab in the Quran, and there's verses of the burqa and niqab in the hadith literature. And this person is called a sheikh. This person is called an imam. And he's coming out and saying there is no hijab in Islam. Can you believe this, folks? This is clear government-funded imams to create disunity, to create a difference of opinion. Did you know that I can actually find a Christian priest, and I'll put a hyperlink below this video, he actually says that Jesus was a homosexual in the Bible, and that Jesus never forbade homosexuality, and Jesus, in fact, was a homosexual himself. You can find imams saying that. So basically what the Australian media does is it finds the most ignorant, the most sellout imam that you could ever find to try and facilitate their false narrative to get rid of the hijab and the niqab and the burqa from Australia. To say, look, the hijab is not in the Quran. It's got nothing to do with Islam. So then Muslims cannot stick up for their religious rights and say, look, Australia provides us with a law that protects religious freedom. But now when we can show a imam that shows that it's not even a religious freedom because it's not part of religion, so Muslims cannot make the excuse that it's part of religion. So therefore, it will make it easier for our governments to ban these Islamic garments. Do you see the lies and the propaganda that is preached through the media? This is really, really wrong. It is so sad that the media is such a propaganda tool. Continue.
Moderate Dr. Mustafa Rashid is another calling for change, the moderation of Islam, even allowing Muslims to drink and eat pork.
The Quran itself does not say that alcohol is banned. It actually has a verse that talks about do not pray while you are drunk. So in other words, the problem is with being drunk, not the alcohol itself.
But this is what happens when Dr. Rashid takes his views around the world. He's physically attacked.
هو ده يعني أنا ما تخيلتش إنه يحصل إنه
There's about 700 scholars around the world who agree with him, and they are trying with their own resources. They're not being funded by anybody, but they're trying with their own resources to publish the fact that a lot of the heritage of Islamic heritage is actually false.
But for their trouble,
Notice that he even wants to say that alcohol and pork is not forbidden in the Quran. Can you believe this, folks? And the only verse is where Allah says, do not come to prayer while you are drunk. This is actually wrong. Allah also says in the noble verse of the Quran that alcohol and intoxicants and gambling are the footsteps of Satan. So Allah says, do not come near them. So there's a clear prohibition in that. No wonder he got actually belted by another imam. And I mean, I don't agree with that. But this guy is a complete kafir. He's actually an infidel. This guy is an apostate. He's completely rejected the Quran. Completely. Allah says in the Quran, whoever makes something haram into halal and whoever makes something halal into haram, he has completely, openly become an apostate, a disbeliever. This is part of disbelief. So notice the Australian government will bring disbelievers to speak on behalf of Muslims. Right? They actually speak. You may say to me, oh brother, why are you making takfir? Well, what other, I mean, how much more can I say? What better words can I describe this man's actions and his words? I'm judging what he's saying in the media. He's saying that alcohol is allowed, that eating pork is allowed. He's saying the veil, the hijab, forget the niqab, the burqa, the hijab is not even in the Quran. And notice, this man was in Egypt. I mean, has he come to Australia now? Has he become one of the imams here? Who actually paid this person to come to Australia? Now think about that for a moment. Was that the secular Zionistic propaganda that facilitated to bring this imam to Australia because he had views against the Quran, against Islam? You see the game that's being played here, right? Let's continue.
all three of these men are now subject to ISIS-called executions. That's hardly new to them.
I have received so many threats in my life that it's become something normal, to the point that if I don't receive a death threat, I'm surprised. Why didn't I get a death threat today? What happened? They must be busy with something else.
They're busy perhaps trying to ban other things. While trying to shut down the debate, Wahhabi preachers are at the same time railing against everything. From Pokemon Go.
Now this is interesting. Walid Ali, who's a Muslim intellectual, and he's in the media on the Project show, he himself has admitted that he too got death threats from ISIS. He spoke against ISIS. And guess what the Australian public did? They spat Walid Ali out and they called Muslim, called him an undercover agent working for ISIS and trying to do taqiyya to spread Sharia in this country. So, regardless if you're Walid Ali and you make claims that you receive death threats, you're still not accepted in the Islamic community, apparently, in their communities. You're not accepted in the Western communities, and even under secular think tanks, you're not accepted, even though you receive death threats. Why? Because at the end of the day, he's still a Muslim. So like I said, these phonies, these imams on here recording and expressing their views, they also are making taqiyya. They're also real phonies, and they're also secret Muslims working in this government and only giving a peaceful version of Islam, but secretly working to also undermine this country and change its culture and change its religious perspectives, right? So it's funny how they use these phonies to come out and speak against Islam, but even they themselves are not accepted, I can assure you. And of course, what they do is they go to imams and they quote them out of context, of course, talking about how they forbid playing games like Pokemon. I mean, there are many reasons why they actually forbid playing Pokemon and things like that. But what's that got to do with putting Sharia in this country? Did any of those imams say that we need to put Sharia into Australia and everyone else has to be governed by Sharia? Why are we quoting scholars and their views of why they think games like Pokemon or Disney should not be acceptable? You can find Christians in South America who actually speak against cartoons like Disney because it has subliminal messages. It has pornography in there, which has been exposed many times. These scholars or these imams also share the same views as some of those Christian groups. And I can even put a hyperlink below this video and you can see a South American Christian, I think he's from Brazil or Colombia, and he speaks about the same things that imams do, some of these imams. But like I said, this is only to exaggerate, create Islamophobia, to show that this culture is alienated. They're against our values, they're against Disney, they're against that. It's just really nonsensical. They're against homosexuality, they're against... I mean, you have Christian groups here who are against homosexuality. You can find Christian priests who are against homosexuality here. You don't have to go to Saudi Arabia and Qatar and all these other Muslim countries. But remember what I said, it's about political correctness. You need to be politically correct. You need to accept secular political correctness. And if you share a different view, then you are now seen as a complete outcast and your freedoms and rights should be completely taken away from you. This is the epic of secularism. The fundamental hypocrisy of secularism.
To Mickey Mouse and same-sex marriage.
وهذه تأتي في ذروة سنام قبح وشناعة الفواحش.
Yeah, sure, it's an abomination. That's what your Bible teaches. But of course, you've shunned Christianity to the side. Sodom and Gomorrah, that's what your Bible actually teaches. Why don't you ban the Bible then? The Bible preaches the same thing, that homosexuality is an abomination. You didn't have to go to some imam in Saudi Arabia to tell you that. Do you ban the Bible? You've got a Bible sitting in every hotel room. That's what the text says. It says that homosexuality is an abomination. You know, even the media criticized Sheikh Shadi, right? Suleiman, I think his name was, from New South Wales, who actually came to an iftar dinner to have dinner with Turnbull. And the Australian media went nuts. They said, oh, look, Sheikh Shadi, he speaks ill against homosexuals. He says it's a disease and so forth. And the poor man was condemned. Turnbull was condemned. He had to stand up and say that, hey, look, we're never going to invite that same man. Although he wasn't even sitting on Turnbull's table. He was sitting on a table opposite to him in the distance, but because he was there, he was told never to be accepted in such invitation, and Turnbull was condemned. Turnbull got up, he had to apologize, and this is what we mean. If your ideas, Sheikh Shadi wasn't even trying to impose to kill homosexuals here. He's talking about a Sharia country, that homosexuality is not accepted, and it's a plague and a disease. Because of those words, because he had a difference of opinion, because he wasn't politically correct, he was no longer allowed to sit at an iftar party. No longer. That's it. So how is his views respected? You want to say you want to build bridges together, let him have his difference of opinion. That's what diversity is about. Why does it have to confine to your secularism? Nowhere in the Australian law does it say that everyone has to agree to homosexuality. Sure, we can have difference of opinion, but nowhere does it say you must accept homosexuality. You don't have to accept it. You can completely have a different view from it, but you can still live in harmony together with homosexuals. I disagree with you. You can disagree with me, but that's fine. We can still live together. In Australia, there's no problem. So why is that not tolerated? Why isn't that idea not tolerated? Because they want you to be forced to think in one way. And that way is only the secular way. If anything else is interjected, if you have a difference of view, you need to keep silent, shut up, and do not talk about it. Do not stick up for your rights. Do not even question, and do not even narrate or propagate your beliefs. Do not keep it to yourself. Do not even educate anyone else about it. How is that tolerance? How is that freedom of speech? How is that the democratic and the secular way? The liberalistic way? Shocking.
Muslim imams, what's in their bank accounts, where it's coming from, who's funding them, the people who are funding them, are they Australian or are they not Australian? Are they non-Australian government agendas?
Yeah. As if they're not looking at you and saying, we want to investigate your bank accounts. Taqiyya now, right? So you are doing taqiyya, so we need to look at your bank account too. But of course, you are a non-Muslim, and we know that. But like I said, you want to create disunity. I don't have a problem if they want to look at the bank accounts. Sure, if they're that afraid, they can look at bank accounts. No problem. But their objective is to make Muslims all a suspicion. All a suspicion. You are all guilty. You all should be surveillance. Can you imagine we did that with the Christian priests? Can you imagine if we said we need to check every single email of all the Catholic priests in this country and they all must be surveillanced? Because nearly 4,444 children have been victims of sick pedophile abuse against these children. Are we putting a national inquiry into these churches? Yeah, we are. But are we surveillancing every other Christian church? No, we're not. Are we putting cameras in all the other Christian churches? No, we're not. So why the double standards? Why aren't we surveillancing every other Christian church because of the many clergy abuses that have done in this country in the name of a Catholic religion? So why? Why is there a double standards? There have been more victims to clergy abuse in this country than there are to terrorism-related deaths. In fact, there are more people in this country that die from tractor-related deaths than to terrorism. So why the fear campaign? Well, the fear campaign is raised, and that's how Pauline Hanson and Donald Trump came to power. If it wasn't for Islamic State, Donald Trump and Pauline Hanson would not come to power. They are in power. I mean, they're not doing anything new, really. They've got crap policies. It's no different than the Labour Party and the Liberal Party. The only reason why they're here is because they're Islamophobic. And that is the best narrative. The best popularity you can get is to write an anti-Islamic book or to say something nasty against Muslims in Islam. That's the popular narrative that's happening now. So if you do that, you're going to get your votes. Why has Pauline Hanson lost consecutively for so many years? Why only now has she come and won so much in the election? Because of, again, the fear campaign, the media. Just a few days ago, about 9 references were raised about Muslims in the media. 9 different stories talking about Muslims. In fact, the media even objects to shaking hands with Muslims. Why are Muslim men not shaking hands with females? This was in the media. Why does Muslims not pat a man's dog? That was in the media. Why Muslims are wearing the burqa was in the media. Why certain Muslim mosques are not using their funds appropriately and so forth. This is all an awakening to raise an Islamophobic agenda, again to go after the minority group, the Muslims in general, under the cover of we're chasing terrorism. This is just a smokescreen. Terrorism is just a smokescreen for their ultimate purpose to completely wipe out Islam and all the mosques in this country. That is their own goal. And you know what? They're not even shy about this. They will come out. I've seen Christians and Islamophobes come out and blatantly say this, saying, we don't accept any form of Islam in this country. Moderate or not moderate, we don't want it in this country. This is what they say.
Militants have escaped with refugees to Europe. I know. And they do that by covering up. Some of them even dress as women. And they flee the country.
Perfect. Yes, they dress up as women. And, you have transvestites in this country. People who are male and they dress up as females. People who are females who dress up as males, right? So you have that sort of diversity. This, at the end of the day, is to claim, people who flee here, Syria or Iraq, they flee Syria in Iraq dressed up as women in Niqabs, and to go to what country? Every country has a surveillance system. Every country has a surveillance system. When you enter, they look at your ID and your identification. That is even if you've got a burqa on. So notice the fear-mongering, the lies to cancel out the burqa and the niqab. This is clear mouthpiece of these Zionists.
Along with the many people who are seeking a better life. Things need to be very clear when it comes to Islam in this country. Otherwise, I'd have to tell the government in 10, 20 years from now, I told you.
This guy really, doesn't he remind you of Monis, that individual that, shot up Link Cafe? It's like he dresses up very similar to him. Look at his thobe, his head covering, the way he's even dressed, very, very similar, isn't it? Some people even say Monis was a secret agent, Iranian agent, who actually did that Lint Cafe, again, to raise this fake news, this staged false flag into showing that there is radical Islam here who wants to hunt and kill all the infidels. I wouldn't be surprised if this person, I mean, they got rid of Monis, right? They killed him. They need someone like Monis to be replaced. And this guy looks like the best replacement for Monis, right? The best replacement. And in fact, let me read you a report about this fake sheikh. One of the imams used in the segment, Mr. Mohammed Tawhidi, made the outrageous claim that Muslims in Australia are planning to create an Islamic State within Australia. Despite providing no proof for such a claim, his interview was aired to audiences around the country and went viral over social media. Little is known about Mr. Tawhidi, and that's the guy here on the left, who claims to be a Muslim leader in South Australia. His centre, named the Islamic Association of South Australia, was only set up last year. That's interesting. And there is little to no information available about the centre and its attendees. When One Path Network approached the Australian National Imams Council, ANIC, for comment on the above individual, they stated that Mr. Tawhid is recognised as an imam, sheikh or Muslim leader. ANIC is the official representative body of all imams across Australia and has over 250 members. The Imams Council of South Australia was also approached for a public comment, and they too stated that he was not recognised and not part of the Islamic leadership in South Australia. The other imam used in the segment is known as Mustafa Rashid, and that's the man on the right, and is known as an imposter and a fraud. He has previously claimed to be the Mufti of Australia and was exposed by ANI in 2014 for his fraudulent remarks. He has no known credentials in Islamic studies, and neither does he have a centre in Australia or a following. We encourage all Australians to always fact check, especially in this crucial time where there are many fraudulent actors in society openly willing to damage the public perception of Islam and Muslims. That sums it all. They are clear secret agents, and they don't have any followings, nor do they have a recognized Islamic center. And when the question is put forward, no comments are raised and no exchange exchanged. Like I said, they work for government agencies undercover who claim they're imams. They're actual secret agents working for the government pretending to be imams. That sums it all.